Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the reactive forms in Angular 18. We are going to see two examples. One is easy one and the other one is a medium one. Medium one will have both edit and the create option. So stay tuned. At the end of this video, you'll be able to properly create reactive forms in Angular 18. So come, with the delay, let's get started. So before we get started, this video is part of the full stack development video series and this is part of Angular project. I will walk you through one by one what we are going to do with the application and then we dive into the code. Alright, so as part of this contact us, this is the simplest form. So we are using reactive form for this page where user will be able to submit their request as a message and this will in turn call an API. The API will in turn send me an email which we saw in the previous video. That is part of .NET Core Web API 8 and this one is Angular 18. So this is the simplest one. So let's go with this one and then followed by we are going to see which is the request video. So this one again I've already given the API. So we are going to build this one and then as per the admin actually I will be able to view all of the requests that came in and I can actually update a request for whoever has submitted the request. So there is an update process happening on the same reactive form. So we're going to reuse the same component and the create. So we're going to see both. So let's start with the simplest one, which is the contact us page. Okay, so I'm going to start very blank so that you know what is missing and what we have to add. So we are on a contact page component. Right now, there is nothing other than the basic definition. And the only thing that I have is in the HTML, like I always say, I actually designed the HTML already. So let's close this. If you look at this, it's plain simple HTML. So it has a second section which has all of the static content. And in the first section, the only thing that you need to understand is there's a form tag. Inside the form tag, we have some inputs, right? And then that's it. It's just the input. It has some text box, again 4 text boxes. The last one is the text area which will have multiple rows, right? So other than this it doesn't have anything. See, if I hit, nothing happens. See, it just gives question marks, nothing happens. So we're going to build from scratch of this reactive form. Now let's go inside the component first. So in order for us to build the reactive form, what you wanted to know is reactive form is one of the good way of building a form. It has so many inbuilt features, but we will start from the basic one. So what and all we need for reactive forms? For reactive forms, we need to import a reactive form module. So because this is a standalone application which is set here, we are going to import the model. Because this is a standalone application which is set here, we are going to import the modules that we want to be here itself. So this is an import section. We import the reactive form modules. If you're using ng module based stuff, then for each ng module, if you import this reactive form, within that any component that you use, it will be automatically included. Okay, so that's the difference. We need this one, and then we are going to use ng for and then ng model. So for those things, what we need to import is common module and form module. So we need these two, right? That's it. We don't need anything else. Let's start with a variable. Okay, so we define a variable named contact form and then we assign the type as form group. If you look at this, form group is coming from the reactive form. See, it's coming from Angular forms. So we define a form group, that is the important one. And then what we do, we write a constructor and then we inject a service called form builder. So how do you write a form builder? So I'm going to inject the form builder. So private form builder, it's just FB is the short name. Form builder control period will ask you to update. We update, this goes away, this error goes away. All right, now what we have to do is let's write a method called initiate form. So what this method is going to do is it is going to initiate our form. Our form is this dot contact form equal to, we are going to say this dot fb dot group. Okay, we're going to assign a new group. We open this So okay, so now here is what you need to understand. So for example, after we build, we are going to call this endpoint. So if you look at this endpoint is asking us to send a request which has name, email, subject, message. These four properties that we are supposed to send in the request. So how you generally have to build is, those four are here, right? So name, email, subject, and message. Now here what you have to do is, I prefer to keep the name of the property same in both the side, in API side as well as in the UI side, which means name is one of the property. We are saying name that goes, we open the bracket and then we initialize the default value as empty string, and then we can leave it. The name is a mandatory property. So in order to validate that, we will say comma validators dot required. So if you say required, what will happen is, actually when we build here, there will be a required property. For example, there's a required property here, right? This required property gets added automatically by the reactive form. That is what this will do. Okay, so remember, whenever we use reactive form, you should add all the validation in the form group itself, not going and adding something like disabled, required in the HTML. Okay, so we have to add it here. Now similarly, I'm going to add the three more properties called email, subject, and message. So I'll say comma, I will add email, subject, message, and in email there is a required validator as well as there is a validator named called email. So it will validate whether whatever you're typing is a valid email ID format. That is what the concept is. So now what we do, we have to call this form, right? So in the constructor, we will say this dot initiate form. So this will initialize the form. Okay, so the form is initialized. All right, now let's go back to the UI. Okay, it is very easy to implement. Just remember, we are going to take only the simple approach. So always reactive form should have a tag called form tag. So in form tag, after this class or before this class, whatever it is, we will assign a property called form group. So there's a form group property and we need to assign, and that we have to say contact form. Okay, so we are assigning this form group. After that, what we do, we have to go through each of these items. So each of these items means basically the first one is the name, right? So what we do, in order to assign the name property here, I'm going to do like this. Okay, there is a property called form control name, and form control name is nothing but the name that you defined in the group. So one of the name is name, that's why I'm assigning name to the form control name. Okay, so the name is defined. Now similarly, we have to define here, we have to define email. So here is email, next is subject, and the last one is the text area, which will be the message. Great, so we have defined all of these things. Let's come to the submit button. When user hits the submit button, we have to take an action, right? So what we are going to do is, we are going to say, hey, whenever the user is hitting the submit button, we will assign that to a property called event. Basically it's an event. So if I open the parenthesis, it is ng submit. There's an ng submit event that is applicable only for the reactive forms. So you can put it in the form section and then you define a name on submit. So on submit is a function that needs to be invoked. So if I come here, I will define a function. Okay, so error went. All right, so let's write something on the on submit button. So on submit, I'm checking if the contact form is valid. What this will do is, because we have set all of these as required, it will expect these values to have some values filled up, not the empty string. So this valid will be true whenever all of these required data are filled up. Okay, so if the form is valid, what we are going to do is, we are going to invoke the API to submit this data. So before that, let's put two more servers injected. One is the contact service and one is the toaster service. So I'm going to bring up these two. So contact service is already, all the services for this complete course has been added. So you don't need to worry about services. So the services is going to talk to the backend API. Okay, so I added these two, and then let's go back and invoke the method. So I'm saying this dot contact service dot send message, send the form value, subscribe to it, and then just show the toast message. Okay, so basically, but if you look at this, the subscribe is showing as depreciated. Okay, so what we can change is we can change this like this into like this. So we can do a subscribe that was not a depreciation, but we are not using the function inside the subscribe. Instead, we are going to use next. Next is means like if the result was successful, what you're supposed to do, and if the result was error, what you're supposed to do. Okay, so inside the subscribe there are two named function, that is what we have to write it. So the on submit is done, but look at this, there is some problem here. If you go here, right, these are all mandatory, but I don't give anything, but the button is enabled. If I click, there is nothing happening, right? Nothing happening because it's all invalid. But how do I show that this is invalid? So in order to do that, okay, what we are going to do is we are going to add a div that will show a nice message that it is invalid. Okay, so I'm going to place that content here, and then I will explain you what it is. Okay, so I'm going to place this code here. All right, so we added a div. Basically it is having an ngf. The ngf is to determine a true or false. Based on true or false, this div is shown. Okay, so we are checking contact form.get, and then we pass the control name. So here the control is name, so we will take the control and then see if it is invalid. If it is invalid, what does that mean? Invalid, it is required but you did not fill up, so that's a form is invalid, right? If the control is invalid, and if the control is touched and dirty, meaning you go inside the control and come out, or you typed it and then you cleared it, it's called dirty. Okay, if that is all true, then we are going to fetch the errors that is specifically for required, and then if the value is true, if there is such error called required, then we will show this one. Okay, look at this, right now nothing is happening. So if we click this and come out, you see this, the error started showing. Now this makes sense for user that you need to fill up this. Similarly, I added the error condition for all the remaining three. You see this, all of these started showing error, but the button is still enabled. We can do some more stuff here to disable the button whenever it is invalid. So if you come to the button, there is something called disabled property. Okay, so we are going to set the disabled property a true or false based on the form is invalid or not. See, the button is disabled because currently it is disabled, like it is all invalid. So if I type something, button gets enabled. The moment I remove it, the button gets disabled, error comes. So that's the concept of this. So if you hit an send button, it will be calling in API, and it will further do whatever the API is doing. Alright, so I filled up something and I'm gonna hit send and see what happens. See, it required the token and it sent a request. You see this, the model was sent properly, name, email, subject, message, and then the API also returned success, right? So it was a 200. Okay, so we sent, this is a payload that we sent, and we got the response. So I would have got an email as well now. All right, so this is the simplest reactive form. Now let's take a look at the next reactive form, which will have both edit and create. Under user ask, there are three components I kept. Okay, so the video request and video request list are basically these two. So if I go to my request, this is the place it will show all of the requests that I requested, okay, as a user. And okay, so this is the one where it will show all of the requests that I requested. Right now I didn't request anything because I am the owner. It doesn't show up here, but I will show you how it looks. But if I go to admin and say request video request, it will show all of the requests which you people, like all the users who raise the request, is going to come to me, and I will be able to do an edit and update the process. Okay, so and then the thing that we are going to see is the request a video. So this is the form that we are going to see. Okay, so video request form is here. Okay, so I already copy pasted the working form, but let's quickly go over what we did. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we will create a form called form group variable, And then we have a variable that has these 5 topics. Okay, Angular, all of these 5 topics, they are called topics. Subtopics are the list of subtopics that belongs to each of these topics. It is again a variable of string of array. I have a user ID variable, I have a is edit mode variable. Currently we are going to use this form for both create and edit. We are going to flip the form according to edit or create based on a flag. Okay, now in the constructor I am injecting these services. The form builder that we saw, this is just a video request service which is allowing us to call the respective endpoints. We have the router service, we have the activated route. Okay, and we have login service. Okay, router and activated route. The difference between these two services, router service is used to navigate from one component to another component, meaning in a route. Like if you want to change the route in the URL, you can use the router to change the URL of the route. But activated route is basically is to read some information about your current URL, that is the route, right? So it helps us to read the current URL. All right, now in the form, in the on init, all right, so now we have on init lifecycle hook. So in this lifecycle hook, as we do, we will initiate the form. So request form is equal to form group, which has these properties. Okay, which has radio request ID, name, user ID, topic, subtopic, all of these things, right? All of these things in which few are required, few are not required. See, URL is not required, response is not required. Okay, there are not, certain things are not required. So whatever is required, we have adjusted like that. And what we are going to do is, this is the endpoint which requires all of these properties. So if you look at this video request, so if you go to this endpoint, you see this, it requires all of these properties. All of these properties are here. That is what I built the form also. Okay, so don't worry about this, we'll come back when it is in edit state. Don't need this. Okay, so now what we are going to do is, we have a simple method called get topics. Get topics, you pass a topic, it will find the topics, subtopics, and it will return the data. Okay, so it is going to return the array of string. So basically what we have is the 5 topics that we have, right? Angular servers, like Azure servers and all of those things. So all for each topic, these are the subtopics. Let me explain you. You can look at this. These are the 5 topics which is populated here. These are the subtopics for this. If you change this, this will change. If you change this, it will change. And for example, if you change this, obviously it will change, right? So these are the topic and subtopic. So get subtopic is the method which is invoked from the UI, which we will see, and it is going to return these data based on what topic you chose. Okay, now in the on submit, it is same thing. We are going to get the request form dot get raw value, which will give us all the property values that we have it, and then we format the model, we assign the value. Okay, and then if the edit mode is false, which means it's in a create mode, we call the create endpoint, send the model, do the remaining stuff. If the edit mode is on, we will call the update, send the model, and it is all same. But how do we know it is in edit mode or not? Okay, so edit mode or not, before we take a look at edit mode or not, let's take a look at the HTML. This HTML is exactly same as what we saw in the previous contractors form. Okay, it has the same input, it has the same validation and everything. Like you have the form group, you have the ng submit, you have the form control name, right? Everything is same. What you should know is status is fine. See, status is also hard coded here. Okay, look at this topic. Whenever does the topic change, okay, on topic change, we are going to pull up the value. So if I go to on topic change, we will set the topic value, and then we will set the subtopic content by calling this method. So we pass the topic, we get the subtopic, assign this, and if you take a look at the subtopic. Subtopic is here, and then see subtopic is here. So we loop through subtopic and populate the options. So that is what the subtopic is doing. That is what the topic is doing. Other than that, they don't do anything else. Okay, and then rest and all is same. We just have the input controls that will just fill up some response. There's nothing else. Now, if it is not an edit mode, which means whenever you guys do, you don't see the video URL and the response, because it is not required for you. It is required for me to edit it. Okay, now let's take a look at the route. Okay, so if I go to app.routes.ts, I have these 4 routes. Okay, like I said, just to view the request, I show this control. Just to view the request, I show this component. For admin, I show this component. Okay, the only thing that you should be interested in is this one. So if it goes to admin /technology/request/edit and then followed by the ID. Okay, if it goes in this route, I will use the same model, the same component here. You see this? When you go to this route, you will see this component. When I go and edit, it goes to this route. Okay, which will also pass the ID. So look at this. When I go and say request a video, it goes to technology request video route. This component loads. But as an admin, if I go to edit mode, it goes to admin technology request edit the request ID. 17 has been formed here, but the component is same. Okay, so the component is same. So let's go inside this component, and then I will show you what we are going to do. Okay, so we are going to use the route. You can look at this route. Route is nothing but the activated route. We are saying activated route, like that route dot param map dot subscribe. We are subscribing to the parameters here. Here the parameter is nothing but this one. If you remember, we used this in the route, right? So this is the parameter. So we are subscribing to this parameter value. So whenever, and the parameter value here in this case is ID. So whenever we get the ID, whenever the ID changes, the edit mode is set to true, and then we are going to call this method and pass the ID. Because the ID is string, if you put a plus symbol in front of it, it becomes a number. Okay, it is basically casting a convertible string into a number. Now when you go here, we call an endpoint, pass the request ID to fetch all the information, and then we do a patch form. When the request comes back with the response will have the same property with the value. So when you say request form.patch form and then pass the properties, it will auto match and it will update all of the content. Look at this, I did an edit, right? See, everything got updated, and then this got opened because I can change it to whatever I want. Okay, so everything is updated here, and then I'm taking the control and enabling specifically 2 controls, which is the request status control and the response control. Because response and request status was initially disabled, let's take a look. Response and video request and this status is disabled, right? Look at this, response is disabled, status is disabled. But if I go to edit mode, this is enabled, and this one starts coming because NGF will allow admin to view this in edit mode. Okay, so that's it we are doing. There's nothing else. Remaining is all same. This is how simple it is, reactive forms. So I hope you enjoy this video. The whole source code is available in the whole complete project. If you like this video, do subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next interesting video. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tech tutorials. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified when we post new videos. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Happy coding!